Hello, thanks for coming today. I'm Debbie at Off Topic, and I'm going to be talking about I didn't plan to learn this. It's one of the biggest things in my life that I didn't plan to learn, but it happened. I'm going to take you back in time to when I was 62 years old, and I was in my 32nd year of teaching. I'd already had a lot of other jobs besides teaching, and most years I worked two jobs. As soon as I got home from school, I had to go to another job. Sometimes that would be a tutoring job, or it could be I worked in different places, in offices, or all different kinds of things. Okay, but anyway, so I'd been teaching for 32 years, and one day I had a panic attack, and the doctor told me, "What's causing this? What are you stressed about? Because next time you'll have a heart attack. You got to get away from whatever's stressing you out." And I said, "It's my job. It's my job. I love my job and everything, but it's a lot of stress." And so he said, "Well, you have to figure out how to get away from that then." So I went home and I started thinking, and I thought, well, I wonder if I could retire early. So I called my teachers union and I checked with my teachers association, and they said yes, I could. I would have to I would lose a little bit of money, if I retired early before I was 65, but it wasn't going to be that much. So I decided then and there that I was going to do that. So I told the school I was leaving at the end of the year, and I started planning what I was going to do. When I found out how much money I was actually going to be having, I said, uh-oh, this is not enough for me to live on. I was living in a condominium that had 2 bedrooms. It wasn't anything fancy at all, but it had 2 bedrooms, and I had a car, and I was not going to be able to pay for all the utilities and everything that I had to pay for, the HOA and everything. So I said, well, I can't even live on 1 month with what I'm going to be making. So I said, okay, I've got to think of something else, because I had no other money. I'd already had a bankruptcy and a foreclosure on my house, and I had no money saved up. So I said, okay, let's think. So I started thinking, what could I do? Where could I go? Where could I go to some place that is not expensive to live? So I started checking around, and I was looking around in the United States, and I didn't really find anything that I could possibly live in with the amount of money that I was going to have. Then I started thinking, wait a minute, I had gone to Costa Rica on a mission trip years before this. At that time I had gone, I think maybe about 15 years earlier. I had gone to Costa Rica twice on 2 mission trips from my church. And I had lived with the people in Costa Rica, and I had been in some small houses, and I knew that I had talked to them about how much they paid and so on. And so I knew kind of how much I could expect to pay if I lived in Costa Rica. And so I thought, wow, maybe I can move to Costa Rica. So I started looking into it, and my granddaughters and I went online, and we started looking at different places in Costa Rica, and we picked out some names in different cities, and we started looking on the wanted ads for homes or houses for rent. And I found houses for rent for $300, $400, and I thought, wow, I could afford that. I could definitely afford that. And I knew the utilities wouldn't be expensive because there's no heating in Costa Rica. And in most of it, you don't need air conditioning, only if you live at the beach. If you don't live at the beach, the temperatures are fine without air conditioning or heating the entire year. In fact, in all of Costa Rica, they don't have any heating. Um, so I thought, okay, well that's something that I could really save a lot of money on because my heating bill was running sometimes $300 in Colorado. Um, and so I started to look into moving to Costa Rica and what I would have to do that. And I decided at the end of the school year that's what I was going to do. So I started to tell everybody that I was doing that. And so then I planned everything out so that I could get my classroom emptied out by the end of the year because I had a whole bunch of things in cupboards. I had been teaching kindergarten, so I had lots of supplies and thousands of books. So every day near the end of the school, um, end of the different months of the year, in May and so on, I packed up all the backpacks with a bunch of books from my class library. And I gave the really good books that I gave to the library at our school. And I called the other teachers in and invited them to pick any books that they wanted. And so I got rid of all of my books that way. And then I started going through all the cupboards in the room because I didn't want the next teacher to have to come in and have everything filled up with a bunch of junk that they didn't want. So I used up all my supplies. And at my house, I decided that I was just going to take the essential things that I needed. So I took out 2 suitcases. I opened them up in my closet and I started putting things in there that I thought would be something essential that I would need in Costa Rica. And so I started actually packing them right away, and I started thinking very seriously what I was going to take because I didn't want to go there with a whole bunch of junk. I didn't want to ship anything. I wanted to be totally free of all of my belongings except what I really, really needed when I left. So I whittled it all down little by little. I kept going and going and going, and each suitcase could only weigh 50 pounds. And I was taking a personal bag also. So I stocked up with shampoo and deodorant and things like that in the carry-on bag. Well, actually, no, those things couldn't go in the carry-on bag because they were liquid. Um, I had paperwork and things in the carry-on bag, and I had some photographs and important things like that I had to keep with me in my legal documents. But I loaded the suitcases up with all the things that I thought I would need, and I kept looking at it and thinking about it over and over again. You know, I took some sewing um, needles and threads and scissors, and I took just different kinds of things that I would need if I was doing crafts. I took like needle nose pliers and a magnet and just things like that. So I had everything ready, and then little by little I went through my whole place and I got rid of all the stuff that I owned. I made many trips to the Salvation Army and Goodwill. I donated lots and lots of things, and then I recycled whatever I could and donated the rest of the things to different places wherever I thought they could be used. Um, I got down to zero. I got down to absolutely nothing left over except for those 2 suitcases and the carry-on. From there, I went to visit my family. Um, I sold my car. The teacher, my best friend at the school, she bought the car for her husband. She asked me if she could purchase it, and she did. And then I didn't have a car after that. The rest of my life, I have not had a car. And At that time, I was 62 years old. I turned 63 after I got out of school. And I went to visit my brother in uh, Boulder, Colorado, stayed there for a little bit. And my cat went with his mother-in-law. And then that was the only pet that I had at the time. And I was told that Costa Rica didn't have pets. That's what that I had read and what some people had told me, which ended up not being true, but that's what I thought. So my cat was already 8 years old, and he went with the mother-in-law, and then I could always know what was happening with him. Then I went to visit my granddaughters in Florida, and they were really excited about me going because they had helped to look up all the information about Costa Rica too, so they were really into it, and they'd done a lot of research, and they were excited to come and visit me when they could. And my sister also she had gone from Pennsylvania to Colorado to my brother's house to see me off there. So I ended up leaving from Florida, and I flew to Costa Rica. And I remember being on the plane, I was really, really excited, really totally excited. And the person that had been our guide when I was on the mission trip was able to meet me at the airport and pick me up. And it was funny because he goes, "Okay, Debbie, yeah, this was like 20 years ago that we did this trip, and now you're asking me to pick you up at the airport." He goes, "This is another luxury afforded from the mission trip." So he took me back, and he booked me into a nice room at a hotel, and I stayed there. And the next day he picked me up, and he had a bridal service where he arranged weddings. He helped people set up their wedding parties and everything. So he and his friend took me around for the next 2 days, all around San Jose and Cartago, getting all these supplies for different weddings that they were going to be doing. And so I got to know, he taught me different things about Costa Rica while we were there. He said, "Oh, see those baskets that are up in the air? Those are trash cans. See those men with the little straps around them? Those are people that watch your cars when you park your car. They watch your car for you to make sure nobody steals it. And then you give them like 40 cents or something after you come to pick up your car." And then he just told me a lot of different things. He goes, "Okay, this is called a casada, and this is a food where you have a meat, and then you have a vegetable, and maybe some fruits, and rice and beans, and all the foods are mixed together. It's kind of like a mixture of all kinds of things, and that's the typical meal in Costa Rica." And he said, "Let's go get you a cell phone." So when I tried to get a cell phone, I went to several of the different cell phone places with him, and they wouldn't let me get a cell phone. And then they said, "You have to be a resident here. You can't get a cell phone unless you're a resident." And he goes, "Well, can I buy a cell phone and give it to her?" And they said yes, and so he did. So I paid him back, and he bought my first cell phone for me, which I had the same number for the entire time that I lived there. So that was what happened. And then I had already decided that I was going to move to a town called Gracia. And so he said, "Debbie, how are you going to do that? You don't speak Spanish. You only know like 15 words. And you don't know anything about the money. There's no way you're going to be able to do that. He said, everybody doesn't speak English here. He said, it's going to be really difficult. And I said, I'll do it. I'll be able to do it. Don't worry. And he goes, okay, well, tomorrow morning we're putting you on the bus and then off you go. He goes, but I want to hold on to your suitcases until I make sure that this is really going to work, because I don't want them to get robbed from you. So I'm going to watch the suitcases, and you just take a little bit of your money with you when you go. And the next morning, he gave me the directions. He said, listen, he said, get on the bus, go to the back of the bus, don't talk to anyone, don't say anything. And when you get to Gracia, get off the bus and then try to find a place to live. And so I said, okay, I will. So the next day I did what he told me, which was really ridiculous. I didn't have to do that, but they were really worried about me. I felt like a kindergartner getting on the bus, and my parents were out there watching me do this and do that and don't do this. And so I got on, I sat in the back of the bus. I didn't talk to anybody. And I got to Gracia. I got off the bus, and then I knew the name of a place. It was like a little, it was a, I don't know what you can call it, but it was like a little hotel where people went, especially people that were coming in from out of town and or from out of the country, and they stayed there for a few days or a week or however long they needed to stay. And it was in the town. So I told the guy the name of the place. Well, he didn't know where it was, so he drove all over the place, and I couldn't explain to him where it was either. So it ended up costing me a lot more than it should have, but it ended up, it was only really close to where I got off the bus, but I didn't know that. So I went into the little hotel thing, and I got a room, and the man that was in there was from Canada. So that was really good. And there was a woman in there that was from Costa Rica, and she spoke English very well, named Melissa. And she said, oh, Debbie, tonight we're going to go to the feria. You want to come with us? And I said, what's the feria? And she said, it's the marketplace where everybody buys their fruits and vegetables. And it's open at night. It was a Friday when I got there, and it's open on Friday nights. And I said, sure. And she goes, I'll teach you all about it, and I'll show you the best vendors to go to buy your fruits and vegetables. I said, okay, great. So that night, I went with Melissa, and there was another Debbie that went with us too. And so we went in her car, and we went to this little marketplace, and I couldn't believe the size of the place. It was absolutely gigantic, because Gracia is a place that is a big, giant farmers market place, because they have lots of farms around the area. So I went around and I saw unbelievable fruits and vegetables I had never seen in my life. I had no idea what they were called. And of course, ones that I already knew about. The ones that I already knew about, like, for example, cantaloupes, you could buy, at that time, you could buy like 4 cantaloupes for $2. And they were delicious, beautiful cantaloupes. You could buy watermelons really cheap also, super cheap. Everything was totally fresh, just bursting with flavor and color. And there were all kinds of drinks that you could get, all kinds of fruit drinks and other seed drinks, like chia seeds and things like that. There were breads, homemade breads made by different people. There were tamales and tortillas and just all kinds of things. It was incredible, gigantic, just a gigantic place. And so she showed me how we would walk around and pick out what we wanted, and you could bargain with the people if you wanted. And sometimes if you bought something, regularly from the people, they would give you a little extra when you got it. Like if you were supposed to get 6 tomatoes, they would give you 7 or 8, or they'd give you the juiciest ones or whatever the best ones were. And if you wanted avocados, they would say, when are you going to eat them? And you could say, I'm going to eat one today and one tomorrow and one the next day. And then they would know how to feel the avocados to see which ones would be ripe at those days. And they would pick them out for you. So it was really, really incredible. I met a lot of people that day. And then the best part was we went back home and I put all the fruits and vegetables in my room. And this lady came in the door back at the hotel, and she was from Canada. No, actually, she was from Alaska. And she said, hi, how you doing? I'm from Alaska. And she said, this is my daughter and my husband, and we're just visiting here in Costa Rica. She goes, we just went to this restaurant across the street. It's a seafood restaurant, and look what we got. And she showed me her food, and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go over there, because it was shrimp, and that's one of my favorite foods. So I ran over, and it was a tiny little restaurant, and there was a guy that was working at the window, and he spoke a little English. His name was Arturo. He introduced himself right off the bat, and he asked me my name, and we talked a little bit. And he said, I want to learn more English, so I hope you come back a lot because I want to talk with you. And I said, great, because I need to learn Spanish. I want to talk with you too. So he said, this is my girlfriend, Jessica. And we started this restaurant together. And we're going to get married, and we're going to do all these things. And he said, you'll have to come to our house for breakfast one day, or, we'll take you somewhere. And I was thinking, these guys are like 21 and 19 years old. And I'm thinking, they're talking to somebody 63 years old and inviting me to do things with them, and they don't even know me. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't think you're really going to do this, but sure. So I said, sure. So anyway, come to find out, they were true to their word. And that'll be something that I'll tell you about in another video. But so this is one of the things I didn't plan to learn. I did not plan to learn that the people in Costa Rica like older people. They like everybody. They treat everyone the same. They don't think of you as, oh, that's an old person, we're not going to talk to them. They just act as though you're just the same as they are. You're just 19, 20 years old too. They just treat you like a normal person, like any other person, like one of their friends. And they truly, truly do, because those people are still friends of mine all these years later. 14 years later, they're still friends of mine, and I've done many, many things with them. Okay, I'll see you in another video. See you next time. Bye-bye.